It is hard to quantify, but it is something that I think your customers grasp onto. They understand, they see it. They think, okay, if you put this level of detail and thought into this event, I know you're going to put that level of thought and detail into the work you're doing for me. And that helps grow their trust of your company. And so when those people, maybe they have another contract land on their desk and they have to decide between the companies, well, they have felt a connection and a trust and they're bonded to you and your company. And so that sometimes is enough to say, I'm not even going to entertain this one, even though it might be cheaper. I could get my services cheaper. This company does it better. They are thoughtful. They're intentional.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Marketing Blender Show. I'm Ryan Heath, and today we are joined by the amazing Lisa Albert. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
We're so glad to have you here. This is not your first time on the show. You've been with us before.
Yes.
We're glad to have her back. Today, we get to talk about events. One of my favorite things, putting on events, how we do them, but also why we do them. Why do we create experiences for clients? And this is actually going to be the first of two different episodes that we're going to have as we dive into this. But before we do, Lisa, you have a really interesting background in putting some of these things on for your clients. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I've had experience in a lot of different sectors. So that's brought some varied experience, of course. Have done it B2B and B2C side. So some of the experience kind of blends some of those, but I think it's all applicable in a B2B world. But I've gotten to do it from a nonprofit, corporate, higher ed, and an agency experience. Some of the things that I've been able to do have been large events, like a summit for our entire client base, customer service kind of experience there. And then I've also done all the way down to the small private kind of dinner sort of things. Also marketing activation events where you're engaging your clientele, just a wide variety depending on the client and what the need was.
So I know you love doing branding. You love taking companies' brands, people's brands, and using them to accentuate all sorts of things. So today, since we're talking about the why, if you're focusing on branding, why might a experience of some sort be your go-to?
To me, that's a very simple answer. And that is your brand is not just your logo, right? It's the experience that people have when they connect and interact with your brand. So I think it's so important that these events help support that and solidify who your brand is in their mind. So it's all about experience. And therefore, your event should be that experience that they get to understand how your brand operates.
I love that. And I love the fact that, let's just talk about the word experiential. You're getting to experience in person something that sometimes can be intangible. You get to invite people into that space, whether it's your actual space or somewhere else. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But who do you invite? Is it always customers?
No, in fact, not always. In fact, I think prospects have a spot in some of these places as well. It depends on the type of event that you're putting on, of course, but I found in my experience that by combining your prospects and customers, you end up with a richer experience. They're able to network and connect with other people like them and learn maybe a little bit more even about their own business. And you're the conduit to that. And then, of course, your customers help make it a little stickier. And
Exactly.
then your prospects see that kind of bond and that connection that they have to you, and they want that. They're like, that's cool. I want in on that.
There's so much in B2B that you've talked about this before that is about creating trust and creating that relationship, but also, just kind of that, that inherent belief that what you're providing is good and real and has real ROI. And being able to, I love that you said, your customers help kind of create that bond with your prospects. And that's an interesting thing that I think sometimes we don't always think about is being able to get there, and it's everything. It's you, it's your product, it's your people, but then having that extra element of, it's kind of like when you get on Google and you see a whole bunch of 5-star reviews, whether you realize it or not, boy, that's creating immediate trust. We're doing this in real time when we create these type of events. Let's talk about maybe, an existing customer version of this. This is something that we've done with some of our clients here at the Marketing Blender. And, Lisa mentioned stickiness just a second ago. When we talk about the ROI for these events, and something else we'll dig into in a little bit. How do you view events that are specifically for your current? I know I've got some thoughts, but I'm curious to hear what you think. Events for your current customer base.
Yeah, and those can range in size. I mean, depends obviously on the size of the company and what you're trying to accomplish, but I've seen them work from the very large summit kind of thing where you're just bringing all of them together and you're providing some value. It's, conference style, let's say. And so they're all getting to hear about some topics that are interesting or important to them while networking with others who are similar to them. So they really feel the value there. I've also seen it in smaller settings where maybe it's just 10 or so of those folks. You still provide them some value, but there's a lot more networking, connection, interaction. And what I find is that opens up conversation, and those customers then start to talk about, well, did you have a problem like this? How
Right.
did you solve that problem? This is what we did. How did you do that? And then you start to form bonds and connections there. And usually your company is often the theme of how they solved some of their problems, and you love that because then you hear them talking about, well, when I used, XYZ company, it solved this problem for me, and then you kind of get the energy picks up.
I love that you brought up the customer interactions because that leads back into the trust that we just
Hmm.
talked about. Again, it's real-time in-person reviews. One of my favorite events that we do here at Blender, we have a long-term client that we help put on their annual customer appreciation event.
Hmm.
And it is a massive undertaking. And we love helping them with the wow factor,
Hmm.
with things that folks in their industry have not seen before. Everything from how we feature their products to massive stages, run of show. We're even utilizing some projection mapping for them this year just to help bring their things to life.
Hmm.
In this case, none of that is cheap. And with these type of events, the ROI question always gets asked pretty quick, as it should. But sometimes that can also be a barrier to taking the leap is what is the ROI of doing something for your current customers who
Hmm.
you already have a contract with?
Is a hard question to answer linearly, I suppose, because you're probably not going to see, or you may in some cases see an exact dollar figure that you could calculate. But what you're not accounting for is the brand loyalty and the trust and the connection that you're creating through all of those events and through those experiences. And so when those people, maybe they have another contract land on their desk and they have to decide between the companies, well, they have felt a connection and a trust and they're bonded to you and your company. And so that sometimes is enough to say, I'm not even going to entertain this one, even though it might be cheaper. I could get my services cheaper. This company does it better. They're thoughtful. They're intentional. I think that was a key. As I'm listening to you talk about the event that we've done here, the intentionality is so
Absolutely.
important. It is hard to quantify, but it is something that I think your customers grasp onto. They understand. They see it. They think, okay, if you put this level of detail and thought into this event, I know you're going to put that level of thought and detail into the work you're doing for me, and that helps grow their trust of your company.
Oh, 100%. If this is something you've been toying with, should I do this event for our existing customers? We totally get that leap of faith can be a bridge to cross. So something to think about is having some pre-prepared sales opportunities ready to go. Maybe you have your sales team on site, and this is more than just, hey, did you guys have a great time at the event?
Right.
You know, I can we up your contract? It's having those strategic decisions for your customers ready. And not every customer. Pick and choose some of your key ones. Maybe it's some of your largest contracts, or maybe, and probably more importantly, it's those clients that are ready to take that next leap.
Hmm.
Have those opportunities ready, have them keyed up for them, or at least be ready to start the conversation that evening.
Hmm.
Of let's say that you're coming into the event, and you've had these conversations maybe back and forth. You've alluded to it with your sales team, but have that sales team there ready to say, we've had such a great time tonight. This is awesome. Let's get it on the books now because you're ready.
Hmm.
Or let's say that you've got a product that you're showing off that's new and innovative. Right? It's an opportunity to
Hmm.
invite those people in to go, hey, we want you in on the first run here. Let's get it ready. And just take a look at what you think you need your ROI for that first event to be.
Hmm.
Have double the sales opportunities already queued up and ready. And you have the opportunity for that first one to realize some of the short-term return that maybe your books need while investing in that long-term return. And then year two, you know exactly what to expect going into it.
Yeah, that is a great point. Having the sales opportunities ready. I've seen events work really well when you have a new product or a new something to launch. Those are great launch pads for that because those clients that are coming to those events, they feel special because they're getting the sneak peek or the first look. And so to provide those kind of opportunities, I find those are very successful.
Let's talk about doing both. Can you have your cake and eat it too with events like these between existing customers and prospects? And you alluded to this earlier that I think in your mind, you're like, oh yeah, let's go.
Absolutely. I've seen it work. So I know that it can. And so it's, it's a little bit more of a customer focused event. That's how it's couched, but you have the opportunity then to invite a few key prospects. We've done this as part of some of the ABM campaigns that we've worked on. And these are people maybe we're courting pretty heavily. And so then that next step is to say, hey, we've got this client summit. I think you might benefit from it. Why don't you come on out and just hear what it's about, see what it might be like to be a customer here. And that sometimes gives them the push they need to go ahead and sign on the dotted line.
So when you do these events, are you treating everyone as equals? Are you approaching them differently? How do you go about that relationship management?
Same but different,
Okay.
in the sense that, you don't want them to feel like an outsider or excluded, or you want them to really understand what a customer experience would be like there and what it would feel like to be a customer. So, there's a lot that's the same, but they also should probably hear some different messages from your sales team, obviously. You should probably have some special little treats and things ready for them. You're courting them. Is there something extra or different that you can do? Maybe it's even something small as a goodie bag and it's, something really customized and specialized for them that is meaningful. So it's just being really thoughtful, and back to the word intentional. We want to be really intentional about how we're reaching each of these people.
All right. I'm so glad you talked about some of the special little things because that's where I wanted to go next. I know you have a really involved presence, especially here in our Fort Worth community, whether it's with TCU or some things you've done with the city and local businesses. So how do you take your events and bring the larger business community, the larger civic community into those?
Community partnerships are wonderful because oftentimes you can find a group. For example, I used to work for Justin Boot Company, and they were big in the community. And one of the things that we would do was partner with organizations and provide custom boots. Example coming to mind, 40 Under 40 event. It used to be with the business press, and there were boots given to those participants. So that was a large event that the business press is putting on, but then they had connected with local community groups like Justin and others that would provide some special, unique gift or trinket or treat for the participants of that, and that makes it stickier.
Well, for sure. And I also think of people like sometimes your local elected officials who are almost never reticent to get up in front of a group of people. I think oftentimes when we think about those folks, we think of paid appearances, and there certainly is a level of pay to play to that. But at the same time, if you're talking about businesses in the community, the political ROI for them is incredibly strong. And oftentimes just a simple invite and letting them know, hey, we're going to have X number of local business owners here, or even better, folks that might be interested in investing in the community at large. And I've always been sometimes surprised how quick they are to go, yep, I'd love to be there. It doesn't just provide additional credibility, but it's just the larger sense of trust, again, coming back to that you're building for some of those prospects in those moments.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It almost is that third-party credibility, not
Exactly.
not that the elected official is necessarily endorsing your company, but the fact that they're willing to be there does lend some credibility.
So you brought up earlier, that you might do one of these when you're launching a new product. What are some other really specific opportunities where an event, a client experience might be the right go-to?
Yeah. So something that I've done before is working with B2B ABM campaigns, and where I'm very specifically courting a certain group of people. If I know that they're going to a conference, there's maybe some big industry-wide conference that's happening, may not have the opportunity to get in and be part of the conference in some way, shape, or form, but I can invite those group of people to some experiential event adjacent to the conference. We've hosted people at baseball games, taking them out on cruise ships or paddle boats and those kind of fun things that are just part of their conference experience, but very specific to, the company I was working for. And that's kind of a unique value add. And quite honestly, those things tend to save a little bit of money because you're sort of piggybacking off of a larger event that's already at play. People are already at the conference, so I don't have to get people to travel there. I just covered the baseball game and a
Exactly.
dinner. So,
Let's go back to branding for a second. I feel like that we see some of these when people do, a brand launch, right? Or a brand re-envisioning. But, what's the in-between? What are some of the smaller ways that this could be brand beneficial?
From a brand perspective, I think it's so important for someone just to understand who your company is and what value you bring. And so I've seen it work really well when it's been, not a large conference, but I'm going to call it not even a small conference, just a gathering of people that it could be 10 people and at a restaurant, and you have a guest speaker come in and you're bringing something of value to these people. And it's on a topic that is so relevant to what kind of work you're doing. And so they're interested in that topic. They want to know you solve a problem for the people.
Right.
They're trying to figure out how to solve their problem. You bring them a resource that helps
I love
also
that.
solve their problem. And it feeds into your brand and stickiness.
I love that. And for those of you who don't know, Lisa also has a background in higher ed. And, the opportunity to impart wisdom, I think sometimes gets so underrated. Which is strange to me because, especially in B2B, we're all looking for an answer to something, right? And whatever it is an answer to someone else's problem. And sometimes that answer can be knowledge.
That's right. And I found those small events to be very successful because they are low cost. I mean, you're really just either renting out a room in a restaurant or you're paying for 10 meals. And then, you have the speaker come in. Maybe you have a speaker fee, maybe you don't. But there's not a lot of overhead that goes with those. And the value that people get out of those seems to be huge, proportionally huge.
We could go on. There's a million great reasons to do these. And I think we'd be hard pressed to find somebody that, if we said they had unlimited funds, would be like, yep, I'm absolutely going to throw a party. The reality is that most people, when they start looking at these, most owners, when they start looking at these, don't get very far down the rabbit hole before they go, this is too complicated. It's too expensive. Name the very legitimate reason that this might scare them off. What do you say to those folks?
First, if you have a professional helping you do all of this, then some of those logistic details and some of those scaries go away because you've got somebody who understands events, understands them well, and then knows how to be efficient with the dollars. As far as the ROI, I kind of go back to the thing we said earlier. I mean, sure, you're going to need the short term, feel like some dollars come back in your bank. You can't just spend and not get anything back from it. But remember the long term game also. And what you're doing with these events is really building trust and what that looks like in the long term. So I would encourage people to not just think so much about the short term. I think that's where people get stuck, but to also think about the long-term game.
So let's say that I've decided that, yep, I want to throw my party. My business is ready. We're ready to do an event, whether it's for existing customers, prospects. How does that fit into my overall strategic marketing plan? What do I need to be thinking about?
Sure. Well, I think you just labeled the key that it is part of your strategic marketing plan, and you can't put all your eggs in one basket and expect this event to be the thing. And I know that events are often a higher cost part of your pie, but it can't work alone. So you have to think about all of the other tactics that you have in place and how they might work alongside the event. Maybe you have an email marketing campaign that also needs to align with the timing of your event and your invitation to the folks. Perhaps they're getting ads throughout the course of this too. So it's just really thinking about that integrated approach to how it fits into the rest of the puzzle.
You're absolutely right, because there may be a digital marketing campaign. There may be landing pages that you have to build. There's all sorts of other little things that have to be taken care of to put on an event, which is what we're going to dig into on the second part of this little mini series. But until then, make sure you hit subscribe and be sure to check out our YouTube channel for more amazing content. And we'll be back for the second part of our customer experience series here on the Marketing Blender Show.